I actually had a class in grad school devoted towards artificial intelligence, but mostly it was theory and equation based. So I had a good base of understanding. And I'll be honest, at the time, some of the stuff we were talking about with the professor, I was like, why would you even want it to work like that? And here we come full circle, right? And it's like, oh, I can see the interest because that's just, that's how people are.
We have, another special guest, man, my brother, Mark Lawson. Um, I think for me, I'm a person who wants to shine a bright light on the most audacious entrepreneurs and visionaries and innovators. And in Atlanta, I'm a person who is known to be a networker and be at all of the events. And if you've been to an event in technology, 9 times out of 10, you've seen this guy, Brother Mark Lawson. And so over the years of me coming in, I think I came in 2018, you guys were on the ground building, and you probably had been working in technology for years and years before that. If you could introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background on you and where you're from, and then, just to give us a little bit of insight.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction. I don't think I've been called audacious before, so I like that. Um, so my name is Mark Lawson. I'm the director of technology for Technologists of Color. I also work as a technology consultant for my own company, Clever Anchor LLC. And I work with various companies handling their technology behind the scenes. So I also work with a group called Black Man Lab. So I have their pin on today. And we reach out to youth between the ages of 14 to 24 to try and uplift them and expose them to the traditions of manhood. But as a group, it's a safe, sacred, and healing space for Black men of all ages. But we're really trying to reach back to the youth. So those are just kind of some of the things I'm doing. Technology wise, like, yeah, I've been doing this since, so I went to undergrad here at Georgia Tech for mechanical engineering. Then I went to Georgia State University. So I have a master's in CIS. And I worked as a software engineer, moved into development, manager role. And then after a while, I decided to branch out. So I started with Technologists of Color about 2015. They'd been around since 2012, which I didn't know, but I went to one of their first events just as a participant, right? Just coming out. We had kind of like a State of the Union, right? So just talking about technology, got out there, got involved with them, bunch of meetups, talking about some really interesting things, got to really know them. And then they were talking about bringing on people to be in leadership, to be planning events. So I joined doing that. And as part of, like, I'm from Atlanta, right? So it's nothing for me to go from here to Swanee. Like, I have friends located. We were speaking before the mics turned on, and I have part of my family is from Powder Springs, right? So like, as a youth, like we were mobile, right? We moved around. So Atlanta is like that. It's diverse. It's spread out, and so I just started attending events. If they had an event, I felt like I could go, I would go, right? And so yeah, I saw you at various events, and if it was about technology, I poked my head in, asked some questions, see what was going on. Got to know people. My background tells me that networking is the most powerful thing you can do in terms of meeting people and understanding what's going on. And it's not just what you know, it's who you know, but also who knows about you. That's the important part. So getting your face out there. So yeah, we definitely ran the streets trying to be everywhere the technology was going on. That's my passion, that's my interest, and I try and spread that around in many places as I can.
I love that. I've spent a couple of, anytime I'm in Atlanta, I've visited Black Man Lab, and I wanna thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being a part of that, because it has been a safe place for me as a man to come in and feel that energy of every generation of Black men, and it's positive, and it's not for show, is for the impact and for healing and for growth. And it's been the most impactful experience I've had as a Black man just going there. So thank you for sharing that. Uh, what was it like going to Georgia Tech for undergrad? Because when I think about technology and education, I don't see too many examples in my community where I grew up of people going to Georgia Tech. So what was that like?
So we're originally from Southwest Atlanta, the SWATs, as it were. Lived off of Indian Road. So my community was Black professionals, right? So I got to see, we lived next to a judge. On the other side of the judge was the chief of police. Person across the street from us owned their own trucking business. So in terms of my grandfather's an entrepreneur, owned a couple nightclubs, one of the first black nightclub owners in the city of Atlanta. So like I saw several different things. And then as far as technology, my father went to Georgia Tech briefly, like pre-Vietnam War, then came back and then went to Georgia State and got his bachelor's in business, but he was always like fascinated with technology. So I started early. Like we always had like things like, you know how you can get in trouble for doing a lot of different things. I never got in trouble for taking anything apart. They might not have made themselves back together at some point, but like, taking out something and taking it apart. So Georgia Tech was one of the things that I had on the horizon, but I went to Douglas High School, which is a magnet school for engineering and applied technology. So they had my head set from the beginning, like started at the point we had eighth grade. So once from eighth grade moving forward, I had some type of technology class. And my teachers early on, uh, after, once you grow and then you go back and you talk to the teachers, they're like, yeah, we weren't too sure about you because I took that same fearlessness into their classroom. And so if I could break it, I would, And so they were like, we didn't really know. We didn't really know because if we told you not to do it, you still did it anyway. So Georgia Tech, actually, there were, I want to say, probably about five or more people in the class before me from Douglas who attended Georgia Tech. And so what they would do is they would come back, and tell us about the school. So it was very approachable in terms of being able to go because I had examples of individuals who actually were accepted there and who were thriving there. And of my class, I think about five or more actually attended Tech. Um, so I wasn't the only one who stepped on campus in that role. Yeah, so Tech was very approachable, but it was a culture shock. I am not gonna lie. Douglas High School is 99.999% black. I think the non-black students were Vietnamese, right? So when I stepped on to Tech's campus, I think we might have made up 4% or so. So it was a totally different feel um, in terms of being in that environment. But the Office of Minority Educational Development, referred to as OMED, so it was like a school within a school, and it was their job to kind of usher us in and guide us through and everything like that. But I will say the program where they introduce you to the school, um, yeah, when you said this is a intimate conversation or whatever. When I went on the uncensored, so I am 5'10" and some change, but the individuals I was rolling with were pretty sure that I was on the football team. And I was like, who? This is a Division I school. You know what I'm saying? Like how but and I'm coming here on academic scholarship. So that was also kind of a, like stuff you've been prepared for, but it's your first time doing that where people just assume that you're something else that you're not. So that was interesting to say the least.
Man, I think stories are important, and you could live in the same city and not know the story of someone, and you can see them and not know that y'all grew up in a similar time, went to similar schools, had similar experiences, similar trajectories in school. And I do think that these conversations are to bridge a gap. For me, it's either we're going to bridge a gap to tech, we're going to put a spotlight on people who are doing the work, and then we want to create access and opportunity. And so, you know, did you see yourself as a innovator, or you were curious? Did you see a vision for yourself?
Um, I would say it kind of evolves, to be honest. So one of the first things is I would never have described myself as a person who gets up and kind of like takes charge. After being a manager, that became well, and I'm the eldest child, so all of those kind of tendencies kind of came out. But one of the things that I think I saw in being in those environments was as easily as certain things came to me, they didn't come to other people. And some people were kind of like precious with the information that they were giving individuals. And then again, there were people who they needed encouragement, right? And one of the things I found about the technology industry is that you have a lot of people who've been told they're intelligent for a good portion of their life, right? And they treat that in a certain type of way. And then there's someone who comes along and who wants to do what they do. And instead of extending encouragement as though there was a time when they didn't know what they know, they kind of like, it's probably not for you, right? Um, and so part of that role is I found myself explaining to people, right? Encouraging individuals, like you said, going to a lot of places. And my experience of having gone to a technical college, right? Having been in a technical major, and being out amongst people who were in the field but weren't from Atlanta. So their experience with Black people was different. Or people who were trying to get into technology and were approaching it like the ease that I felt in that situation, and they're like, come on, and being welcoming, was different than what people had before. And to me, it was like, it was nothing. It was like, if you put in the effort, now you put in the effort, it's completely on you, right? But if you put in the effort, then you can have the results, right? And then people having candid conversations about the way things are, right? So I wouldn't say that I found myself initially wanting to be extremely technical, right? And then I found myself in an area where leadership was more important than knowing where the comma went. And so that's kind of how my career has shifted.
So from a leadership perspective, I think leaders, they watch, they follow, and they absorb. So they watch trends, they watch what's going on in the world, they follow, because you got to follow a leader. You got to be a great follower to be a leader. Right. And so they follow well. And then I think from that stage, they create their own way of doing things. And so as a leader, what type of leader are you?
So I let whoever's in charge be in charge until they start going in the wrong direction. That's kind of how I see that. Um, So my idea is not to get in front of the train and like steer it in a particular direction. Like I feel like if we're moving towards a shared goal, then everybody take on what's necessary. So in terms of like following a leader, so as far as technology the color is concerned, Marcellus Haynes started, so he founded it. John Exum is now our executive director, right? So I have those two individuals to look to in terms of like being in that space and maneuvering in that space. Black Man Lab, Molly Davis, so attorney Molly Davis, and then Marty Monaghan, right, as executive director of that organization, and just the care that they put into people. So you've been to Black Man Lab, so I'll take that one as an example of the welcomingness, right? And that's leadership. That's top down type of situation because you can be in a place and not feel welcome, right? And then our events, right? So the notion of having the events for Technologists of Color and then welcoming people in, like you can want to do that, but if people get again, if they don't feel welcome, then it doesn't matter how well you've laid everything out if they get the vibe that the vibe is not right.
Yeah, and I think I've always felt welcome. Shout out to my man Marcellus Haynes. I call him the doctor, you know, because he's at a point in life where, he had to focus on family and kind of have a reset. I had the same thing in my life where I felt like I was burning out, and now the podcast or having these conversations in a space where I can sit still and I don't got to do as much traveling is gonna make, it's gonna give me a little bit more stability around storytelling. um when you What's exciting right now for you, that you in the industry that you're in, and what are you paying attention to mostly?
I think like everybody else, AI is really interesting. I actually had a class in grad school devoted towards artificial intelligence, but mostly it was theory and equation based. So I had a good base of understanding. And I'll be honest, at the time, some of the stuff we were talking about with the professor, I was like, why would you even want it to work like that? And here we come full circle, right? And it's like, oh, I can see the interest because that's just, that's how people are. Um, and just diving back into it to try and understand how to utilize it. And I think it's an inflection point. So uh first I was on that cloud wave, right? And then everything being moved to the cloud and understanding what that is. And now we're building upon that where there's AI. Like I would say that early on I would describe myself as a software engineer, right? Like so that's kind of like my title, right? And that meant that I programmed whatever. It didn't matter if it was a device that was being used by people to do accounting, like, or in a manufacturing situation. I did medical software, I did banking software, I did handheld devices. With, by which I mean not just the little, they called them dolphins at the time, but like the early Windows mobile type devices, iPhone. Like, so we just programmed. If it had a screen and connected, I wrote software for it. I would say that now that is a very hard thing to do because everything is breaking out in every direction. So I am interested in all of it. I just can't jump on every new thing. But I think that's kind of the exciting thing is that each piece is just as intricate as the other pieces, right? So if you're interested in AI, if you're interested, I mean, and if you want to get deep into machine learning or from a business standpoint, if there's just something where you think it would be good to have a virtual assistant or something like that, that's a wave to jump on. If you enjoy talking and stuff, I got Alexa, I got Google Home, right? So I grew up watching Star Trek and other things like that. So the idea that I just talk to the computer, like that just hits that cool spot, right? Like, so even though my Alexa didn't do as much as I would like for it to do, the fact that we're having a conversation is cool. So um, anything emerging, quantum computing, not as much versed on, but just anything that like is kind of new. Like how long I stick with that wave once I find out, it depends on the amount of investment, right? Like some might look cool, but then once we really get really deep into it, I was like, I don't have much time to devote to this. But the AI stuff is really kind of leaning into my wheelhouse because it's a kind of a merger for me in terms of like I also took psychology classes and stuff like that. So it's like mimicking the human brain or to a certain extent, and then the mathematics, like so our engineering background, tons and tons and tons of math. So if we can talk about it mathematically, I can understand it pretty much.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, my co-host, Travis Nunley, he's um, at this intersection where you are, where AI is a very exciting thing, and you guys have been, studying it, and I believe that there's innovation for people like me. I'm a creator. I got a lot of contacts. I have a massive amount of content. I want to take it to the cloud. I want to organize it, and I want to be able to create content from the editing side quicker, and be more efficient. And so I built the network. I have the body of work, but now I need the system. And so to attract the right type of talent or the right type of resources, these conversations, open these doors. So I would love for you to talk to Travis. I would like to dig a little deeper into the impact that you think you've made so far in your journey, because I do think you've touched a lot of people. And what does that mean to you?
So I think we kind of spoke about it earlier. My initial intent, right, was to be really technical. I went to all these events, not necessarily a network, but like what's going on in marketing technology, what's going on with SQL Server, what's going on. So I came from that background where, like, I touched on every little piece. So I wanted to know what was going on in that piece. And so as you start talking to people and you start encouraging individuals, you kind of get an update. And so people are, getting out of their boot camp and deciding to go into a job. And again, that whole idea of networking. So it's like, hey, all right, this person. Oh, you don't know them? Let me introduce you to them. And that turns into an opportunity, turns into a job. Sometimes it turns into a company. You know what I'm saying? That's just kind of how um, it just made sense to me, right? Like if you wanted to become a CTO, you have to meet a CTO in order for it to become a possibility, right? So I go around and I meet individuals. Oh, that's what you do? Great. And then via Technologists of Color, we have the opportunity to help people accelerate their career in terms of like, hey, we go into all these conferences. Like, to be honest, I would go to certain conferences and I was like, okay, this person was flown here. They're putting this person up in accommodations. This person is getting paid to be here. And this is not the greatest talk in the world, right? So once you see that your estimation of what's going on is not really what's there, you're like, yo, I'm good enough to be in here. Like I'm good at what I do. Like we need to improve the way you speak, but like, hey, let me introduce you to this person and maybe you'll be able to get on this stage, right? Because I've seen you and I know that you can do this. We just need to tighten up that talk. We just need to whatever. Like so um that and then, you know, staying in one spot long enough to have people, go by and then come back and report back and you're like, okay, like I remember, when I talked to that person and we did that thing. So, it feels good. It feels good.
So when you think about, um, I'm asking questions a lot of leaders, and I ask, Marcellus and Travis and Troy, the Tech Twins, and Dr. Nashley, um, where do you see everything going in tech world here in Atlanta from a visionary perspective?
So we pivoted from simply doing events in general to doing workforce development when we started hearing from companies as they were coming in that they were looking for talent. And I would say, even with what the economy has done, there has been no lessening of the commitment to get people from here, right? So there's a lot of people moving in, but also accessing individuals here. So I still see that continuing to change as Atlanta gets shaped by all those individuals coming here. But they're coming here because of Georgia Tech, because of the AUC, because of Georgia State, because of all of those different things, and they're establishing innovation hubs and all that. And um, that is not going to stop, right? Like, I don't know, but like it seems like certain portions of the city like have become little uh valleys devoted to specific companies because they like it so much they threw up another building next to that one and another building next to that one. So the jobs are going to continue to come here, and it's based around innovation and technology. It's very technology driven. So I don't see that um, ceasing. But what I do see is that Atlanta is also the home of entertainment, right? So everybody knows us for our contribution to hip hop and R&B and all those other things, but the movie industry as well, and then doing different events and recognizing that the music industry needs servers too. The movie industry needs, that's all of that you talked about. Like you have content, right? That content needs to be housed somewhere. That content needs to be accessible. So all of a sudden now you have this overlap and this expanding of what people think of as the technology industry, which is also a passion of mine of because these opportunities are out there. I really don't care what it is you do. Let me show you how they do it in technology, because this might be one of the crests of the waves that might carry you into something else just to provide that same service, but for somebody over here, right? So
I'm visionary filmmaker Savanzel. As you already know, man, we at Kit Labs. My ideal is to, you know, bridge a gap in technology, create conversations, and create a room where leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs can have a conversation. I got my man Mark Lawson. I called him up yesterday. That's how I do it. Y'all know I call you last minute. And Mark said, hey man, I'll be there. What time? And I'm here. So thank you, man, for coming. I'm gonna talk to my co-host, Travis, a little bit more about AI. I really appreciate you, man, for taking the time, man, and I admire everything you're doing, man. Continue to give, continue to be the leader that you are, continue to, show that passion as being a strong black man at Black Men Lab, and continue the great work at Technologists. Cover.
All right. Thank you.